people want to raise? No? Okay, all right. Cool bananas, thank you. We have a really massive agenda because we have our local boards here, each of them speaking. So if I could ask councillors that will limit our questioning of our local boards to perhaps 2 questions from members of the committee. Yeah, two. 2 questions. Yeah, 2 questions. But we'll see how we go. Okay, he's gone straight there. I actually had the Waitemata local board input. Is that okay? Sorry, Helgard. So we've got Waitemata local board coming in to speak on item 10. Richard and Alex.
Thank you,
Welcome
Madam
to
Chair.
you both, Chairperson Northey and Deputy Chair Bonham. You have 5 minutes.
Well, obviously, this site is very important for the future of our downtown area. It's a site that has the opportunity to link the Lower Queen Street development with commercial, particularly the new Commercial Bay development, with the Viaduct Harbour and through to Wynyard Point. And what's really important is that this, in terms of urban design and in placemaking, is currently a negative component in that respect, becomes positive, and that it provides office space for workers and businesses, but more particularly appropriate residential development should be prioritised. And the situation with respect to the Viaduct Harbour and the Wynyard Point is that magnificent public spaces have been created there, but the decision that was made some time ago that residential development would only be high value because of the high value of the land and the public investments in it has, and Eki Panuku would acknowledge that in our meetings with them, has partially failed because the wealthy people who bought those properties there, many of them are not often there. It's not their primary place of residence. It's a bolt hole for occasional visits to Auckland. And so the opportunity for the generation of a healthy, active community in terms of placemaking, but also in terms of safety and crime reduction, has not been taken, and we think it needs to be taken here. Provision for key workers, sort of police, teachers, and so on, and also for non-workers, retired people and students to live there needs to be done, and it needs to be designed really well to do that. So that's the top priority. Transport is obviously an important secondary consideration, and we support the inclusion of a bus facility and micro-mobility transport provision and short stay car parking, particularly at the southern end of the site, to continue to meet and to improve transport outcomes in this area, but they shouldn't be dominant over the urban development aspects. So we want to enable us to encourage the continuing transition in transport modes. There should be provision within it for the parking and storage of micro-mobility vehicles, so they're less of a trap for people who are frail and of low vision scattered throughout the city. And obviously the extension of cycling lanes throughout this area. We see this as an opportunity to demolish the very much value not enhancing Lower Hobson Street flyover and ask that active consideration be given to a local network plan that would work out how best for transport to go through that area between Quay Street and going to the south and the west and to the north from that point can be developed so that flyover could go. We note, and I'm on the Queen Street Business Association representing the local board, their great concern about changes that you're aware in this area, and they fear the loss of short-term parking, and I think that needs to be listened to, at least in the short to medium term, because the effects of COVID have been greatest there in terms of the loss of people who are working there, tourists and international students and so on, to keep the hospitality, retail, events and shows, businesses going effectively there. There's also a continuing public transport reluctance brought about by COVID. We had a report at the City Advisory Board yesterday that reluctance is there, particularly for families to catch buses at night, which would be an opportunity for families to gather after work or to go to early evening shows. So we believe that concern by the Queen Street Business Association should be listened to in terms of providing some short-term car parking there, and I don't think you can rely on the market to do that on its own. So,
Thank you.
got anything to add, Alex?
Yeah, sure. Okay, you've just done your 5 minutes. So are there questions? We have questions from Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Richard, for your presentation. Look, I'm just wondering, in your feedback to this committee, in fact, your feedback as a local board, because obviously the downtown car park is based in your ward, do you ever talk to your neighbouring local board areas about their thoughts to help sort of pull it together? You know, it's tricky, isn't it, when you're the board for the central city, because obviously it's impacted by others. Not just the community, your own communities. But I just wondered, do you have a process that you have, and would you consider doing one, or how would you think the system would work so that, or is your input just purely your own input from your own?
No, we don't have any systematic input. I've heard some verbal input from some of the rural boards that until public transport improves for them, they'd like to ensure that there's at least some short-term parking there. But not in a formal sense, no.
Councillor Coombe, and then the last question will be from Councillor Walker, as we're taking 3 questions for this local board.
Whaawhitai, Madam Chair, talofa lava, tēnā korua, thank you for presenting and your feedback that's in the report. This question might be more directed to our Head of Strategy, because I appreciate you've added in there wanting to see inclusion of residential affordable accommodation into the development. And in terms of the way in which we could make that happen, my understanding is that we would have had to have secured budget given that direction. And I just wondered if it might be helpful to say where that fits in our affordable housing, the framework that's being led by you, I think, Madam Chair, and just that I totally appreciate what happened down at the viaduct. And I remember 10 years ago saying, at the time, as a local board, we were like, we have got to get affordable housing into the mix, because we're going to end up a ghetto of exclusive housing, which is kind of what's happened, that key workers can't afford to live there. But at the time, we were told, sure, we will deliver. Waterfront Auckland said, we will deliver affordable housing, but who's going to pay for it? So council didn't have a budget then, government wasn't interested. So I just wondered, is it the same context?
Through the chair, happy to take that. It is the same context, and so I'm just flicking through the. Remember, there's been 2 decisions. Well, one major decision made in December last year around the development outcomes for this site, and what we're talking about today is the transport ones particular, but we have. You have considered land use outcomes, urban form, that kind of thing. So I'm just flicking through where we got to with that. But in short, if you wanted to require, say, affordability criteria or something in that, then we would need to put that into the tender, and it would have an impact, obviously, on the kind of development there and financial implications and all that kind of stuff. So at the moment, that is not part of the proposed process that we're going through. We're not making a comment about affordability or price or anything like that.
Thank you, but thank you for putting it on the table for us to think about.
Councillor Walker. Thank you, Councillor Coon.
So a couple of questions, one of which just follows on from Councillor Desley Simpson, and that's around engagement with other local boards. I mean, for example, I think in the survey of the parking for this building, many of the highest users are from the Albany ward because many of those people don't have access to public transport and have got a high dependency on the downtown car park, for example. So are you familiar with those figures?
Well, I think I mentioned that in my reply to Councillor Simpson, that I had a little bit of feedback from the outer local boards where they don't have adequate public transport yet. That is an issue for them.
Sure. And the other question just goes to the use of the building, and sure, there's a requirement for accommodation, but equally there's a requirement for employment in the downtown area. Has your board weighed up, the issues around accommodation versus employment in terms of the use of the building? And obviously that would include both office space and retail activity.
I'm just answering because I'm the planning lead, and I'm aware of a number of offices that are actually being turned into residential space, that actually it seems at the moment that there is too much office and commercial space and not enough residential. So that seems to be where things are moving in that line. To just add on to what Richard said on your first question, we were aware at the beginning this was a confidential exercise. We were given very little time to feed back on it, and were given very little information at the first pass. It was only later on when we found information and felt that perhaps our views had not been fully and accurately represented that we came back to give a more detailed submission. But we would absolutely welcome, I think, if the appropriate authority, whether it is you or Panuku, would consult with other boards. We didn't see it as our project.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll let you get away with that second question. Okay. So agenda item 10 will probably be around 1 p.m, given the way we're going with our local board presentations, if you want to hang around till then. But, oh yeah, well, the item on the downtown car park will be around 1 o'clock, I'm guessing. So I'd like to move that we thank and that we receive the local board input from the Waitemata local board regarding item 9. Sorry, you're right, Councillor Walker, and will be seconded by Councillor Coombe, councillor for that area. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Declare that carried. Okay, extraordinary